Alright, so full disclosure, as I have a day off of school, I'm doing more YouTube videos than I typically would. As well as recording this third YouTube video, I had come across a mistake that I could not figure out on camera, and it took me it took me a little while to actually work it out. And so, for lack of not being exactly where I was when I left off, I'm going to walk you guys through relatively what I did, the logic behind it, and we'll take our time. So first off, we're going to go over here to basic entity, and I added a integer to calculate the current state the player is in, as well as a enum as our state machine. We have a on ground and a in air. So on ground represents the integer number 0 and in air is 1. We set gravity to a number we preferred. We as in the royal we, however you want to look at that. And yeah, so that's what we added here. Gravity, jump state, and a number to keep track of that. Over here in the game HPP, on the collision, I changed a few things here. So we're still checking if the player collided with the blocks, and if it did, it returns true. If that is true, we say, hey, the player's on the ground. And this is the major important change here. We are setting the player's position to its current position in the x-axis, and then in the y-axis we're looking for the block we collided with's y position. We are then subtracting by the player's size in the y direction times 2. Now why is it times 2? Because over here in basic entity, actually not, wouldn't be in basic entity, over here in player, notice how we're scaling. Otherwise, right? So like that scale is very important. So if we come back here to the game, we then return out of this loop if this is the case. We do this and we get out. On collision, otherwise, is saying, hey, we're in the air. I added a fixed update, and where this would go is if the event type is key pressed, fixed update. It's like update is happening, fixed update only happens under these events. And what happens on fixed update? Well, let's go over to player. Let's come over to fixed update. We say, hey, if the keyboard is pressed, increase this jump counter. Actually, I don't think this is necessary anymore. Let me just kind of verify that before we jump down the rabbit hole of code that was left over as I was testing things, because that's a possibility. Let's hit play, see if we have any issues. Nope. Seems fine. Alright, so ignore that last little tangential thing. That seems to have been leftover code from testing. Alright, so other than what we did for the change of the collision code, and over here in basic entity adding the gravity, the jump state, over in player we added a check jump. This will reset when on the ground. The current jump is on the ground. Well, the current state. So if we're on the ground like that, then we can jump and set vertical velocity to 0. So if we come down here, vertical velocity starts at 0, and then we have a max jump velocity, in this case negative 100. Again, don't need the jump counter. That's old code. So we're checking for this jump, and on update, this is going. We're like, hey, is this happening? We want to be able to jump. If we're in the air, the vertical velocity is being added to the gravity multiplied by delta time and is set back into vertical velocity. And then we say, hey, take this number and multiply by delta time. Why is the 2 here? Well, simply if we remove it and we hit play and we kind of jump, we can see almost visually that we're only jumping half a cube's height. And so how are we supposed to jump up on a cube if we're only jumping half the height? So just for now, we're doing a multiply by 2. That way when we jump, we can at least jump over that next section. With that said, we do this. If the keyboard key is pressed and that key is W, and we can jump, then we're in the air. Vertical velocity is set to max jump. So all of a sudden this number is set to negative 100. On this check jump, or on this in air, we're going, okay, negative 100 plus the gravity. Gravity is, if we go back to here, gravity is 200. Right, so we're at negative 100. We're adding 200 times delta time. So imagine, let's take a calculator here. Okay, so basically what we have going on is 200 is the gravity. This is the downward force. It's being multiplied by delta time. In this case, it's probably like 0.16 or 0.016, something like that. So, okay, we got like 32. And this number starts at negative 100. So negative 100 plus 32, now we're at like 68, or negative 68. Then plus another 32, so on and so forth. Eventually that number becomes positive. As that number becomes positive, it will drag us down because we are moving by the speed. So it starts dragging us down. And again, when we come over to the game loop and we look at the collision code, when we collide, we are then on the ground and back over here to player. When we're on the ground, this then becomes 0. So we're no longer like shooting past the floor. And what this allows is a very gentle jumping arc type system. You know, if we like jump off, oh, we can, as you see, we kind of like had like that little saving thing, and oh no, we died. Or, you know, however, it's Terraria clone, so probably not just platforming. But I wanted to get this part in and keep this video relatively short to give you guys a short and concise example of how I'm implementing the jump. That way we can move on to more pressing matters like the terrain generation.